Hello, and welcome to my Interpersonal Communication Final Project for Human Services 508 at Liberty University. I'm Katrina. Next slide. In this presentation, first I'll talk to you about the overarching goal for my life and how enlarging the conversation, a concept we learn throughout the course, influences my overarching goal. Then I'll talk about the background of behavioral blend influences, barriers to overcome, noise pollution, both internal and external, and finally I'll detail my plan of action to achieve my overarching goal for my life. First, the overarching goal, enlarging the conversation. In the first week of our studies, we were introduced by Stuart a concept called the contact quotient, or CQ. He talked about this and that depending on how well we know the person, the quality of contact possible, the denominator can be exceptionally large or very small. For example, it's very small if you're having contact with an anonymous store clerk. It's very large if it's with your husband of 10 years or your wife of 15 years. My goal is to enlarge the conversation by allowing others to feel heard. Next slide. I want to give the gift of feeling heard to everyone, especially those least capable of returning the favor. This week I was reading an article by Jotun and McGee, which was written in the Nursing Standard, titled Effective Communication with People Who Have Dementia. And a lot of the concepts presented there, like waiting for them to respond, not rushing their thought processes, can apply to all kinds of people who may have trouble communicating, and those people are ones who need to be listened to the most because they tend to be in social isolation, as they found in their study, or they presented in that study, the article that I referenced. I also would like to just relieve the pressure cooker that Peterson, Why Don't We Listen Better? He talks about how when people are so emotionally bound up, when they have flat brains, they need someone to just listen to them and to reflect their thoughts back to them, and so that they can feel heard and their pressure cooker is released. I also learned a lesson from my grandmother's life. She passed away in April, and I had the great honor to read and write her eulogy. What I learned from her life as I reviewed it was that she made everyone feel so special, and the way she did that was by making them feel heard. Next slide. Now I'll talk about my background and behavioral blend influences. Carbonell wrote a book called Solving the People Puzzle, Understanding Personality Patterns, and his meshes a few theories together to come up with and present the DISC personality type, where D stands for demanding, directive, and pretty dominating type personality. I is an influencing, inspirational, interested in people kind of personality. S is more of a passive, shy, submissive type personality, and C is cautious, compliant, and contemplative personality. Well, you can read the book to get a good idea about what personality type you might be, but we took an assessment in this course at the Uniquely You website, and I'll talk about a couple of the graphs that came out on my assessment. Next slide. This is the graph that represents this is expected of me result. So this is what I think I'm supposed to be like, and that's DI or ID, which is a pretty demanding and intense type personality. I tend to think that people expect me to be very influential and inspirational all the time, and that I should have all the answers. I'll talk about a fault of this personality type in just a couple of minutes. Next slide. The next graph that they presented to me was my This Is Me graph, and this is who I really am at home, called an above the midline personality type. It's mentioned in the book and in my results from the personality test that this is a rare type, and it's the overachieving type. I strive to be great at all levels, and I operate in all different levels at the same time during certain times. This can cause a lot of stress at times, but it's me. Next slide. Now I've talked about the overarching goal for my life and the background behavioral blend influence. Now I'll talk about the barriers that I have to overcome. First, my poor listening skills. The Burley Allen text, listening, the forgotten skill. I learned what a poor listener I was. I actually scored in the lowest category possible in the initial test. A week later, in the Discovery Health assessment that I took, I scored an excellent, and I really think the only difference was that, well, of course they measure different things or different tests, but I was just paying attention to my listening that whole week. I was really immersed in the readings and applying them already, and I think it really made a big difference. Some other barriers is personality type weaknesses. My DIID personality, this is expected of me, tends to make me keep a relational distance from people, and it's very true, and I've noticed in my professional life. As a female aviator, I've always tried to keep things very professional and not try to be one of the boys and just keep things professional. Well, in an article I read about, written by the authors that you see there, entitled Interpersonal Skills of Professional Women, a Psychological Approach, they mentioned that building trust and working on those interpersonal relationships in the workplace are very helpful to the interpersonal skill and working relationships. So that's something that I need to overcome, is my desire to keep a relational distance with my colleagues. Next slide. I'm also influenced by noise pollution, both internal and external. Some of the sources which were mentioned also in the Burley Allen book, Listening the Forgotten Skill, were, one, for example, is my belief system, that I tend to believe that the person who talks is the one who has the power, and I need to just keep focused on the fact that two people in the conversation are present and both have power, and often the person listening tends to have a lot more power. Some external sources of noise pollution are when sometimes if somebody interrupts me, I have a hard time focusing on what they're telling me. And then also because I was interrupted, my mind is halfway on to what I was working on before. So the way I can combat that is to just ask the person nicely for 30 seconds to just complete what I was doing, or to turn away from my computer, close a couple of windows so that I can give my full attention on them and make sure that they feel understood and that I understand them. So now I've talked about the overarching goal for my life, background, barriers to overcome, and we've come to the last section, my plan of action. So my plan is to die to myself. As a Christian, we're reminded throughout the New Testament that our duty as followers of Jesus is to die to ourselves and our nature, and to serve others. I plan to serve others first by listening, and also to ring the pebble, as I spoke about in a practical book review on the Peterson text. Talked about how it's something I really want to do. When people come to me and talk to me about things, I want to be someone that brings it back up again, because I'm interested and I've been thinking about it, and I'm wondering if they've practiced any more of it. In order to embrace these new listening skills, which I have learned throughout this course and started to implement into my life, I have to embrace the tension and the awkwardness, because it is going to be awkward. In both the Peterson and the Burley Allen text, they talk quite a bit about how it's going to be awkward to acquire a new skill. In the Stewart text, specifically an article that was written by Wilmette called Communication Spirals, Paradoxes of Subdrugs. In order to stop the communication spiral from going downward, you've got to do what comes unnaturally, and I think that applies with a lot of these listening skills that I learned about in this course. And then lastly, just to set up a reminder and a review schedule to just think about listening, to not let it just slide and not let this course be 2 months out of my life, but let it continue and throughout the rest of my life, and just to think about good listening. So that concludes my presentation. I talked about the goal for my life, background, behavioral blend influences, barriers to overcome, noise pollution, and my plan of action. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you for a great course. I've really learned a lot, and I hope you have a wonderful summer.